Folks, you guys are in for a treat of a lifetime. My guest this week has been in showbiz for more than 6 decades. In those 6 decades, he's appeared on the big screen alongside legends like Marilyn Monroe, Rosalind Russell, Eddie Albert, Sid Charisse, Natalie Wood, Charlton Heston, Yul Brynner, the lovely Claudia Cardinale, Richard Widmark, and Lana Turner, to name a few. On the small screen, he has appeared on many, many television shows like Murder, She Wrote, Dallas, Chips, Fantasy Island, Wonder Woman, and Hawaii Five-0, to name a few. But it was his role as Bernardo, leader of the street gang The Sharks, in the iconic 1961 classic musical West Side Story, for which he won the Academy Award for the Best Supporting Actor, that generations of movie lovers remember him. I am so honored to have him as a guest on my show this week. Actor, dancer, Oscar winner, George Chakiris joins me. George, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, hey, thanks. I'm so glad to be with you, and thank you for that really beautiful introduction. I hope I deserve it. Yeah, thank you.
Oh no, you're fantastic. Like I said, it's a big honor for me to have you on. I want to start off, George, in the early part of your career. You know, at what point in your life did you know that you wanted to become a professional dancer?
Well, I started dancing a little bit on the late side. I was young. I was 19, but for dancing, that's a little bit late. But I kind of had a natural ability for dance. So I graduated high school in Long Beach, California. Went to Long Beach City College and so on. And shortly after that, a girl that I was dating in high school told me about the amazing dancing school in Hollywood, and she told me Sid Charisse takes class there, Leslie Caron takes. So Leslie Caron. So I, of course, when I heard that, I had to check it out. So I took the train from Long Beach to Hollywood one morning, and I watched a professional class. There was nobody famous in class, but I didn't. Once I saw that, I just knew it was what I had to do. So I got a job working downtown at the May Company as an office boy in the advertising department. I worked during the day and there, and I took class at night after work at the school, and that's what got me started. And I was so lucky to have found that situation. It was great.
Well, it's fantastic. I'd be remiss, George. You're a first generation Greek American. I just want to let you know that WNTN in Boston is probably one of the biggest Greek stations in the country. We have such a huge
audience
of Greek Americans that listen to this. Yes.
Wow, how wonderful. Yes. My God, that's great.
Yes, I want to mention that to you. And
thank you.
We're streamed all over the world, in Greece, in Europe, everywhere as well. So I want to thank you for bringing your culture to Hollywood. Like I said, there's a ton of Greeks that listen to this station, and if they're listening, I know they're listening right now. So thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Gosh.
I want to talk a little bit about, you've done so many iconic films as a dancer. How does George Chakiris become one of the dancers in the dance sequence with Marilyn Monroe in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and Diamond, when she's singing Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend? How does that happen?
Well, I'll tell you, when I first started taking class at the American School of Dance, it was called, and I told you Sid Charisse and Leslie Caron and many, all the ballet companies, when they were in Los Angeles performing in town, always took class there as well. So anyway, I said I started. I was working at the May Company downtown and taking class at night. And at that time, I would hear the kids talking, and we'd all go out to dinner afterwards, after that late class. And I would hear them talking about all the things that they were doing. At that time, a lot of the kids were working on Singing in the Rain.
Right.
So but Eugene Loring, he was the owner of and main teacher of the American School of Dance. He had choreographed for ballet theater. He choreographed a very famous ballet that's still in the repertoire of ballet theater called Billy the Kid. So after I got really lucky because a lot of us got lucky. Mr. Loring, we always called him Mr. Loring, was choreographing. Oh God, for Stanley Kramer, the 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T.
Wow!
And he needed dancers. He needed 60 male dancers for a big sequence in that film. And at that time, there weren't that many dancers in the union. So he was able to hire a few dancers who were not in the union. But again, this is a long story. I'll try to move on. So I was lucky to be able to work on that film, even though I wasn't in the union. But we worked on it long enough for me to make enough money to join the union. So after that, I was able to audition for any film that was looking for dancers. So I got to work in a few of them, and one of them was Gentlemen Prefer Blondes for Jack Cole. So I auditioned for that film, and I got to be one of the dancers behind Marilyn Monroe in the Gentlemen Prefer Blondes number. Such an incredible number. Wow. I mean, of course, she's amazing. But Jack Cole, the choreographer, was just one of the iconic choreographers of all time. He influenced Bob Fosse. Wow. He was just great. So I got to be one of the guys in this fantastic number and yes, working behind her, which it was just so fantastic, and I was so lucky to be there. We all were, because it was Marilyn Monroe, and that was the movie that actually made her a star, because it was. It was such a beautiful role for her, and she was so beautiful in it. And and of course she was. It turned out she was a musical talent,
right,
as well. She sang, she moved beautifully, and she was Marilyn Monroe. So it was great to work on that number. And by the way, she was very quiet. She didn't socialize between takes. She just was concentrated on her work, and so I never spoke to her, but got to be around her. It turned out a few other times as well. So I was in her presence, so to speak.
Right.
And she was always charming, quiet, and just concentrated on whatever it was she was doing. But that number is just a great number. Jack Cole was fantastic.
Marilyn had a reputation for at times being difficult. Did you find any of that with her?
Well, I'll tell you what, she wasn't on this. Because at the time, didn't think of speaking to her or anything like that. Again, because she was quiet and just concentrated on her work. It took 3 days to film it.
Wow.
But she was not difficult at all. She was on time. Whenever they said cut for any reason at all, she didn't go to her dressing room. She didn't look in a mirror. She just went right back to her starting position to start over again. So I'm saying that because that's how concentrated she was on her work. To me, when I think of Marilyn Monroe, of course I've read books about her, and we all know too much about her in a way. It's kind of not fair. But on that movie, she was professional, there at a second's notice. She was a conscientious worker. Right. I think she was a perfectionist, but she was beautifully behaved and just quiet and working.
Right.
She cared about her work.
Do you remember where that scene was filmed?
Yes, it was of course on the soundstage at 20th Century Fox on Pico Boulevard.
George, I want to talk about the meat, the crust of the interview, the West Side Story. I might be wrong on my dates, but around 1959, 1960. Ironically enough, you're doing the role of Riff, the leader of the Jets, not the Sharks, in London.
That's right. My first experience with West Side Story. I have been working, as a chorus dancer, as I said, on different movies and things here in Los Angeles, and but we were really at the end of the movie musicals that were being made. They kind of came to a stop, and so work for dancers in Los Angeles was less. And so I thought that what I needed to do because of that was to go to New York. And so I bought a one-way ticket to New York, and I had some friends who put me up on the couch in their living room in New York, and they knew everything was going on in New York. And as it happened, it was good timing, Jerry Robbins was auditioning kids for replacements on the existing show, which had just had its first year anniversary, and for dancers for the London company. So I auditioned for Jerry Robbins 3 times, and when I originally went in, they asked me. Ruth Mitchell, who was his stage manager, looked at me and she said, "I think you should read for Bernardo." So they gave me the script, and I looked at it and worked on the role of Bernardo. And when I went in to read for Jerry, he was rehearsing Ballets USA. So I read for him on their lunch break, and I read the material they wanted me to read for Bernardo. And when I finished reading that section for him, he asked me to take a look at the role of Riff. So I took about 20 minutes or so and went back in the wings. This was at the Alvin Theater in New York. And I looked at Riff. I looked at the role of Riff and read for that role. And then he asked me to learn Cool, because in the theater version, Cool is sung by Riff. In the film version, it's different. So I got the music, the sheet music for Cool, and worked with the pianist and so on. And they came back maybe 10 days later or something, and I read for Cool for Riff, and I did Cool, and it seems to me that I read for him one more time, and then it was such a great day on my birthday in 1958.
You were 24. You were 24, right?
Yes, I was. Yeah, and September 16th was my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday!
Thank you very much.
God bless you.
And I got a call from Ruth Mitchell telling me that I had the role of Riff in the London company, and of course it was a fantastic phone call. And anyway, and that's how I first was associated with West Side Story and working with Jerry, and working for him was fantastic, of course,
Right.
I was really lucky.
Now, a lot of my audience may not know this. The film version, they were talking about Elvis as Tony and Liz Taylor as Maria. Is that true?
Well, when I was doing the show in London, there was a bulletin board up with clippings of different kinds, and the word was out that they were thinking of Elizabeth Taylor, and you're right, about Elvis Presley.
Wow.
And so we all thought, well, we can't do that. So, but just Jerry and Robert Wise considered a number of people who have, of course, Elvis was an extraordinary star, from the beginning. But they also, Robert Redford, a number of other people who were considered for West Side as well. But definitely Elvis, yes.
Wow. Talk about the casting of the film role, George. How did it happen for you, for the film?
The film?
Yes.
Well, I had done the show in London, playing Rick for by that time about a year and a half. So and so about five of us in the London company were asked to do film tests, and of course, I'm sure they did film tests for the New York company and so on. But for the five of us in London, I was one of them, and four of my the other cast members who we all were tested, and it was letters that came to us individually from United Artists, and here we go again. But my letter asked me to do a scene as Riff and a scene as Bernardo. And, Ken Leroy, the original Bernardo, as I was working opposite every night for a year and a half, was so extraordinary. He was fantastic. He tested as well, and, a few of the others. So we went out to the studios outside of London, and all of us, they took us all in a car together, and we all did our individual tests. So we were out there for a while. And then we drove back into London to get ready for the show that night. And so we all had a pretty we loved the experience of testing and just the thought that who knows, maybe. But then the weeks started to go by and none of us heard anything, so we assumed that's that. It was about 5 or 6 weeks that went by after we did the test. But then one night before the show, there was a call at the stage door and it was for me, and Jerry Robbins was calling from Los Angeles, and he said, "We liked your test, but we'd like to test you further. Could you get a week's leave of absence to come to Los Angeles and for a further test?" And I said, "Hey, of course, yes." But anyway, the theater management was good enough to let me leave the show for a week, fly home. I got to see my father. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and I met Bob Wise for the first time, and I did a test in color. Our tests in London had been in black and white. But the test I flew to Los Angeles to do this time, with Jerry Robbins directing it, was in color, and it was specifically for the role of Bernardo. So I got there, I think, on a Monday. I met Bob and Jerry, I think, on a Wednesday, and did my test the next day. And then I flew back on Sunday to go back into the show on Monday. And again, the weeks started to go by, just going I love this part of the story my story anyway. I got into watching tennis in London, which I've loved ever since, at Wimbledon outside of London, or in London. And I was watching tennis out there one day with the Rod Laver and some of the great tennis players, and something told me, I should get to the theater. It was way too early to get in ready for the show, but so I left my friends and I went to the theater. It was about 5 o'clock. And there was a telegram waiting for me telling me I had the role of Bernardo in the film. So my instinct was telling me, I don't know, who knows. But anyway, that's how I finally knew that I was going to be in the movie.
Fascinating. Now, did you know Rita Moreno before West Side Story?
No.
Oh, wow.
No, I didn't.
Wow.
I met Rita the very first day of rehearsal here in LA. That's when we all kind of met for the first time. I did know a couple of the kids from the London company. Eddie Verso, who was in the London company, he was the youngest person there. He was only 16 or 17, but I saw Eddie again because we had been doing the show for a year and a half. But everyone else, pretty much everyone else, I met for the first time, for the first in the first day of rehearsal.
Wow. Now, how was the chemistry in the beginning of the filming with the rehearsals?
How was the chemistry?
Yes.
hey, it was great.
Yeah, because
it was absolutely fantastic. Listen, we were all excited, and the way each rehearsal days started with a ballet bar. That is to warm up for a dance rehearsal.
Yes.
And then there'd be a little bit of a coffee break. And then Jerry Robbins would come in. He always came in very quietly. He was not a noisy man at all, but he came in very quietly. He smiled a lot. I love Jerry. I love Jerry Robbins. I owe him a lot, you know.
Right.
But when he came in, there was kind of electricity in the room. I don't know how else to say it but it was good electricity, and so we all kind of had to rise to his level, whatever it was. But there was just a thing in all of us to just do the best we possibly could and just keep that energy alive and going. So that's what it was like all the time. It was a beautiful
Amazing.
atmosphere. Yeah. The cast were all wonderful with each other. Nobody had a problem with anybody else, except this is always hearsay, but I did believe it. Natalie wanted someone other than Richard Beamer to play Tony. Wow. She was the only person who wasn't happy about him.
Something that blows me away, George. Like I said, the chemistry was fantastic with Richard Beamer and Natalie Wood, but they never actually spoke on the set or off the set. Is that true?
I think both. Yes, they never spoke to each other, and Richard said to me later. He said, "Well, I could have spoken to her, but he also didn't. He just didn't think of it. That's just the way it happened." And but then, now no one else. They didn't replace him, so of course he was there. He was as you know, he was in the film.
Right.
But it must have been, Natalie was 23. She was a star, an experienced film actress, but she was only 23.
Right.
And Richard was probably the same age, give or take a year, one way or the other. So, and he had been in movies since he was a teenager too. But one of the things I always want to say, for Richard's first day in front of a camera was when we did the drugstore.
Yes.
And the day before was the day that Jerry Robbins was fired. So Richard never had the advantage or the blessing or the wonderful things he would have had if he had been directed by Jerry, and maybe this thing of them not talking to each other would have changed too, but it didn't, because Jerry was gone, and Natalie loved Jerry. Anyway, so Richard, it was it must have been very difficult for Richard.
Right.
He told me himself in the evening he would call Sandy Meisner, who was an acting coach, and to get help on the phone, but it's just not the same. But to his credit, I think he's just beautiful in the movie, and who would ever know that they had any kind of a problem if you didn't hear about it? You'd never know it.
Do we know why Jerry Robbins was fired?
Jerry was like Marilyn Monroe, was an extraordinary perfectionist. And so he was taking, this is what I understand, he was just taking too much time. And of course, that's money. But enough had been filmed of Jerry's work and the different numbers. A lot of the movie had been filmed. And so I think it was kind of safe for the United Artists and so on to let him go, because they really had more than enough of what they needed from him. Because I always think and feel myself that this film could never have been the same were it not for Jerry Robbins. The show couldn't have been the same without him. It was his baby, it was his idea, and it was his genius that I think we all see and experience. Of course, the extraordinary music of Leonard Bernstein and so on.
Yes.
It's a Jerry Robbins genius kind of experience.
And it's funny, George, that you mentioned that, because a lot of the studio heads actually thought they had an artistic success, but not a commercial success.
Well, yes, I remember one day while we were shooting, we were standing out in the street outside one of the stage door, one of those big doors, and there were a couple of men there in suits, and they were talking about that. And I remember hearing one of them say, I think this is a pretty good quote. He said, I suppose he was from the front office, and he said, "We don't know if we'll have a commercial success, but we feel we might have an artistic success."
Oh, right. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was the feeling. Nobody thought about this, but the feeling that we all had was that we loved what we were working on, because it had such a beautiful feeling in every way.
Yeah, because West Side Story, George, to this day remains one of the most iconic musicals in the history of cinema. I mean, it gets passed down. I mean, I have my kids watch it. It goes from generation to generation, and you were part of that. You actually had a lead role in it. And like I said, you won the Oscar for it. It's a fantastic performance. I actually had David Winters on as well. You know David? He was
David Winters?
Yeah, he was Arab.
I say that again.
I had David Winters on as well, and he said he was so happy to be part of this ensemble of great dancers and actors.
Absolutely. You know what? Since we've done that film, we have remained to this day a family where we're all close to each other. When we can, we see each other. Some live on the West Coast here and some on the East Coast, but whenever we're close to each other, we always get together. And the same was true with Robert Wise. He loved getting together with the girls for lunch and so on. And he said that has never happened to him in any of his other films. The feeling of West Side was special.
Fantastic. George, I want to ask you, whose idea was it to put the darker makeup on the sharks? Was it Robert Wise to make them look more,
Are you talking about the makeup?
Yes.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what. In those days, and if you go look at any male on film or on television, they're all darker.
Right.
Steve McQueen was darker on film than he was in real life. It's just the way makeup was done. But in West Side Story, we were a little darker, and it never bothered me in all these years. It never bothered anybody else. But I think with Steven Spielberg, announcing, and he's, right. I think he's saying he will only use Hispanic people, and so it becomes like, in my opinion, a silly issue.
Right.
Because again, in all these years, no one ever said it before. I think it's because. And by the way, with all this, with things like this kind of surfacing now, I'm reminded myself of, I personally think that casting. Well, first of all, in today's world, you have so many. A huge Hispanic population. If you really want to say they've all got to be Hispanic, you have a lot more people to look at.
It should be it should be based on their acting skills.
I'm sorry.
It should be based on their acting skills. You know what I mean?
I didn't understand that. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. It should be. You're saying it should be based upon their acting skills, not the color of darker skin.
Well, it's not just an acting skill. It's is that person if I'm casting something, do I feel that person, whether Hispanic or Greek or Italian or whatever, do I feel that's the person I'd like to cast in this role? To me, that's what casting is about.
Right.
You have more choices today, but by the way, in Zorba the Greek, Anthony Quinn, a Mexican actor, played Zorba. But who cared? He was fantastic.
Right, exactly. Right.
But if they were casting it today, they'd look at a lot more people, you know.
Right.
And the Greek community wasn't offended. It's I think it's kind of stupid, but there it is.
Yeah, I do too. I want to ask you, like I said, West Side Story is, iconic. During some of the scenes that you were doing, talk about the outfits you wore and what happened.
In those days, there was no such thing as a stretched fabric. And my suit, my black suit, was made of I can't remember what it's called now, but it's a regular material that guys, their suits were made of, whether they were dancers or not. So the material did not stretch and did not move with the movement. Most of the time it did, but when we were shooting the dance hall, I don't remember what sequence it was. It was probably the dance hall, but my pants ripped in the back. So, but there was a spare pair. So I changed real quick and I put on another pair. And it happened again. So, but there was not another pair. So I had to put on black tights underneath the pants. So, hopefully you wouldn't see a flash of pale skin.
I want to get to Oscar night, George. I want to talk about the night of the Oscars when you won the Academy Award.
Okay.
Folks, joining me on the phone is Academy Award winning actor George Chakiris. He won it for the role of Bernardo in the 1961 iconic film West Side Story. Talk about that. You went to the Oscars with Rita Moreno.
Yes, we went together. We went together the following year as well. Yeah. The limousine came to pick me up, and then we drove over to Rita to pick her up. And, she's very funny. And she said, as we were walking from her place to the car, she said, I'm putting on my loser's face. But anyway, we got there. It was held at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium at the time, and it was in black and white, not in color. But it was
amazing.
It was amazing. It was fantastic. That year, for both Rita and myself, there were some amazing performances that had been nominated. Judy Garland. I can't remember who else in Rita's category. In the best of, it was Montgomery Clift, Peter Falk, George C. Scott, and Jackie Gleason. So anyway, it was but listen, I was so naive at the time. I didn't know the difference anyway,
Right. But for a brief second, was there any, when they said your name, George?
I think the way it happened is when I finished, I did go back to the press room for a few minutes or something, and then I came back and took my seat in the auditorium again, and then Rita's category came up at that time, and she got up and gave that lovely acceptance speech, and after that, of course, we went to the governor's ball, and we sat together at the table with other people, and it was just a joyous kind of night. It was so wonderful that we both got lucky, because anyway, it was just an amazing experience and just such a lucky time. It was wonderful.
George, you once said that you made a mistake with Hollywood films. You didn't really get quality roles that you were hoping to get after the Oscar.
Well, those were the movies that were being made. And I was in movies with Charlton Heston and Yul Brynner and Richard Widmark, and they were doing these movies. So it's just these were the movies that were being made, and I was lucky to be cast in those. I do understand, and I've thought about it myself, that people can say, well, he was good in West Side Story, but he didn't do much after that, but that simply was what was going on.
Right.
And I said my co-stars were, Lana Turner and those extraordinary people. I made 2 movies with Yul. With Dirk Bogarde, with Rick Robertson, yep. I was in. But the thing I will say is, and I didn't know what a career was, quite honestly, and it never occurred to me. I didn't think about it, that you have to plan it and be selective or selective as you can be in each project. But I simply, I was a dancer, and I was just glad. I was glad to be working, but and I did love working on those other films as well. They were important A films, and I was working with some of the biggest stars in the business. So
it's funny because Rita Moreno didn't work for 7 years after she won her Oscar.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I remember. Let's see. Oh yeah, and I think she got her. She didn't. It's true, she didn't, and she was still being cast in the old. People get stuck in their impressions of people, and it takes a person of imagination and some kind of courage to break that. So she correctly didn't go for some of the things that she was sought for.
Right.
And she chose a totally different path. She went back to the theater. She went to London and she worked. And little by little, she look at what she's doing now. For goodness sake, it's great.
That's fantastic.
And that's. But she got to do what that movie with Carol Burnett, and I mean she did make a few movies, and she also did reprised a stage role. That she did a show called The Ritz, where she plays Gugi Gomez. As an entertainer, and she was so fantastic in that. Listen. She's so gifted. She's so wonderful. She's so and I think the proof of all that is we see what she's doing now.
Yeah, she's incredibly talented. She's one of the rare actors who has the EGOT, the Emmy, the Golden Globe, the Oscar, and the Tony.
Yes. Yeah.
Phenomenal.
We've been friends ever since, of course, and as I said, we're all a family, and we do get together. But I love Rita, and the Greek Film Society here in Los Angeles honored me with a lifetime thing a few months ago, and Rita came and she presented it to me. So we've spent some really wonderful times together ever since.
Amazing. George, I want to talk. We spoke a little bit about Steven Spielberg making a remake of West Side Story. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my first thought is, hey, Steven Spielberg is Steven Spielberg. We have to pay attention to. He's a gifted, talented, wonderful filmmaker, and also Tony Kushner, I think, who is
the writer,
working with him, is a wonderful writer. But they'll do something wonderful. It'll be different, and I don't know what it'll be, but it's I think it's exciting, he's I don't know what he's actually said. We just hear things
Right.
about choices that he will make,
Right.
And of course, if this has just come to light within the past year or so, but I'm sure that they've been thinking about it for much longer than that. So I think it'll really be interesting to see what they do. And a lot of things will it'll be wonderful. I really think it'll be wonderful.
Fantastic. I mean, I'm looking forward to it myself. George,
Yeah.
George, I want to talk about your newest passion in your life. You actually design jewelry. You have a, you have a beautiful brand called the George Chakiris Collection, which you can see at georgechakiris.com. Talk a little bit about your jewelry line.
Oh, well, it was a hobby. I was taking classes downtown, or not downtown, but at Barnesdall University here on Vermont and Hollywood Boulevard, where there are courses for all kinds of different art endeavors, jewelry making, painting, sculpting, and so on. And I opted, I don't know, I can't remember now why I did it, but taking the classes and being in a class with other people, anyway, it kind of I loved doing it, and I loved making things. There was great pleasure in seeing something in your mind, and then eventually being able to do it in my case. I've done almost everything in silver, but it took over, and little by little it grew, and I got a Japanese distributor in Japan
excellent
to represent me, and things like that have been happening ever since. So I would call it a small business, but it's very gratifying. It's very different from anything else, but it's fun.
Your designs are fantastic. I went online and checked them out. You can go to georgechakiris.com. They're beautiful silver pieces, and they're fantastic. You should definitely take a look at some of his stuff because it's fantastic. George, I want to ask you about making jewelry. There is a parallel between acting and making jewelry. It's pretty similar. There's a discipline, there's patience, and the persistence and dedication in making both successful.
Absolutely. And you know what? And one of the things that has crossed my mind is that you're as a performer, as an actor, you're doing it for an audience. You're doing it for other people. Of course, you're involved yourself, but it's for an audience, and the same is true with jewelry. You're really doing it hoping that other people will like it, so it's for other people. It's the same kind of purpose, so to speak, and it's I always love it. Working in the theater, and when you feel that it's going well, and then the audience is liking it. It's when the show is over. That's you feel. I don't know. You feel you feel better.
Right.
And the same is true when somebody buys something. It's a gratifying experience as well, because you think. Somebody likes what I've tried to do.
Right. George, I'd be remiss. I'm a first generation Italian American. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you how it was working with Claudia Cardinale in a 1964 Bebo's Girl.
Oh my God, that's one of my favorite times ever.
Wow.
I loved it. I loved it. I was so. I don't know what made those people want to use me, but I'm so glad that they did. Claudia is
stunning.
It's just wonderful.
Stunning.
I still know Claudia as well.
Tell her I said hi. Tell her I said hi.
I will. And our director Luigi Comencini. In the 60s, the 60s pretty much specifically were a fantastic time for Italian filmmakers. Because all the great ones were kind of in that decade, before and beyond as well.
Marcello Mastroianni.
Yeah. So I really I loved it. I love that movie, and I'm so glad that I got to be in it and to, of course, work with those people. Somehow it was different from another movie experience because of I guess the nature of the Italian people that you work with. It was great.
Yeah,
it was
amazing.
great.
I mean, George, you've had an amazing career. You're one of the Hollywood. You're a Hollywood legend in my eyes, and you can
You're
sing.
so nice. Thank
No, it's the
you.
truth. You can sing, you can dance, you can act. I mean, your West Side Story to me is like an explosion of youth on screen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With the beautiful colors as the backdrop, just an amazing. I mean, like I said, my 13-year-old daughter knows who Rita Moreno is. You know what I mean?
Oh.
It's just you guys are iconic, and God bless you for thank you so much for bringing your talent and letting everybody share it with everybody. So this has been a big joy for me. You're my first Oscar winner to have on my show.
Yeah. Well, listen, I've really enjoyed talking to you. I really have, and it's nice for me to feel, I don't know, liked.
No, you're more than liked. You're loved. I want to ask you one more question, George, real quick, because we're getting ready to wrap this up. I've been very fortunate to interview a lot of actors and a lot of the old timers, and they always tell me that they've done so many movies, but their first love is always theater. Do you feel the same way?
Ask me that one more time. I'm sorry.
I've been very fortunate to interview a lot of great actors. They made many films, but they always told me that their first love will always be theater. Do you feel the same way?
Yes. I think I would. There's first of all, when you're on stage in a play, you're not there. Nobody calls cut.
Right.
Yeah, and so there's this linear kind of experience that allows you to go through the whole thing, and also once you're on stage, the director is no longer there. It's you.
Yes.
It's you and your acting mates, and so we're in control. We don't think of it as being in control, but it's just a nice thing to that experience of going from beginning to end, and also being on stage, being with the audience is incredible, because no matter, every night is different,
right.
And it's you can in the course of the evening how things are going, because the audience, they don't yell, but you kind of feel if you're really with them or not. So it's a beautiful experience, because it's a social kind of experience in a way, and I really do love the theater. I just read a very short play yesterday called Red, and it's a very short play, but it makes me think, wow, wouldn't this be fun to do in the theater now? Yeah, the theater is great. Theater is wonderful.
Well, maybe Steven Spielberg will call you to be a technical advisor. Or you could probably. Well, you know what? I tell you what. You and Rita can.
That would be fun.
I still think you and Rita could play the lead roles. I mean, you guys look fantastic.
Well, thanks, God.
This has been fantastic for me, George, and it's definitely one of the interviews I'll tell my grandkids about someday. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much, and
God, thank you so much. Honestly, thanks for putting up with my hearing.
Oh, my goodness!
To talk to.
Thank you, and God bless you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, George. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you again.